When we last talked, we were talking about the importance of canon law and how it's based on religious teaching and it governs many aspects of life. And the two forms of punishment that the church creates, excommunication, which is a banishment from salvation, and a banishment from the church, as well as interdiction, which is more of a punishment on communities and not allowing them to practice sacraments. We also saw the power of the church in that it held. And with all that power came with a lot of corruption and much needed reform. And as power grew, discipline weakened amongst church leaders. Wealth and positions of power began to corrupt the intentions of the church. The first reform that's going to take place is going to be the Cluniac reform, and it's going to refuse to allow nobles or bishops to interfere with anything monastic that's taking place. Pope Gregory VII is going to get into what comes to be known as the lay investiture controversy of who gets to pick religious leaders. Is it kings and emperors, or is it church officials? And you're going to see that the church is going to outlaw the marriages for priests, because prior to this time, priests were capable of getting married, and many priests actually had children. So what you really see is the church is trying to put a real big stamp on all the corruption. They're also going to prohibit a practice called simony, which is the buying or selling of church privileges so that you could have pardons or benefits. During this time period, you also see Jews come to take a prevalent role in medieval Europe, and Jewish communities flourished all throughout Europe, especially in Spain. And what's going to happen is you're going to have this term that's going to set the precedence for hundreds of years later to come called anti-Semitism, where people have prejudices against Jews. So any kind of illness, any kind of famine, Christians oftentimes blame Jews for it. So all this darkness and despair that took place during the Middle Ages is going to be revitalized as they work for life towards normalcy. Europe's population grows from 38 to 74 million people in 300 years. The settlement of those 9th century invaders led to peace and stability, so people like the Vikings became Christianized. You have the improved climates, and you have more land that's going to be farmed, which equals to more food. And you're also going to have changes in technology, such as water and windmills, heavier plows made of iron called a caruca. Horses are going to be used instead of oxen to plow fields because they create a collar harness, which allows a horse to be more efficient, to work more land. And in fact, they can do 3 times the land that an oxen can do, or 3 times the work, I should say. They also create the 3-field system and let one of the fields lay fallow, and more crops could be yielded, more food, better diets, and therefore people live longer. And when people live longer, the population of Europe's going to be developed. Here's some images of the harnesses and the plowing of the fields, as opposed to the oxen that you see to the top right, and the yoke, which is a very much slower process. Trade is also going to grow with population explosion. There's going to be an increase in demand for goods. And so places like Venice and Genoa and Pisa are going to establish trade with the East. And therefore, you also see the learning of Arabs and Greeks now appear in the West. Banking is going to explode with the commercial revolution, the printing of coins, banking and paper money, partnerships between companies are all going to develop. And as a result, you're going to have towns come back to life, old Roman cities come back to life. There's now a market for trade, and a new middle class is created called bourgeoisie. One of the big things you see also is the practice of guilds. A guild is a group of people who have similar jobs, so either all merchants or artisans, bakers or blacksmiths. They all have similar jobs, and they set the standard to improve everyday life within their field and improve the economic and social conditions of their craft. The guilds then allow for the training of apprentices who would go and live and work and study under a master. And journeymans move from job to jobs, acquiring various skills. And guilds take on the form essentially of unions, protecting the rights of those people within an industry. All right. And governments' right to rule themselves from charters that are obtained from the lords or the kings. Town life is going to not be also pleasant, though, because there's no sewage system. So people leave trash out on the streets. There are a lot of it becomes dangerous because a lot of fires take place. The streets are poorly lit. It's dirty. It's smelly. People lived in close quarters. And so don't think that everything in the revival of town was pleasant. And then labor lords eventually become landlords. So serfs become rent-paying peasants or tenant farmers. So that's where we get the term landlord. It's feudal. What's really important to see, the two great significance is the Byzantine Empire, which is the new empire in the East. The Byzantine Empire is going to be centered around Constantinople on the Bosphorus Strait, and it's going to be an empire that's settled around trade. Their defense is made of walls, moat, and peninsula. And Constantinople is virtually a natural defense. You see here, there's a wide moat that runs through there. Excuse my outlining skills. And they have this fortified wall that's built in on there. The politics are going to be mostly trade and art. And relationship between church and state, we talked about this in our class. The Byzantine is going to split from the Catholic Church in that they're going to create the Eastern Orthodox Church, with their leader being the Patriarch and not the Pope. Whereas in the West, the church leader is the Pope. In Christianity, there's all the ceremonies and holy days. There's going to be this controversy called the iconoclasm controversy, where the question is, should Christians use icons to worship in, or images of Christian people, yada, 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 to get them through their religious worship ceremonies? Well, the Byzantine Empire is going to disagree and say that you can use those. The Catholic Church is going to say, no, you can't use those images, especially during the Middle Ages. The Catholic Church also did things like marry clergy. And that's going to lead to the schism or breakup of the church in 1054. The eastern half is going to be Orthodox, and the western half is going to be Roman Catholic. We spent a lot of time in class on Justinian, so I won't harp on this too much, but perhaps the most important emperor of the Byzantine Empire was Justinian, who ruled from 527 to 565. The most important thing he did was codify Roman laws, take 500 laws of outdated laws, things that didn't make much sense, and made them applicable to everyday life in Rome. He rebuilt the Hagia Sophia, which is a great religious building, and he had a reconquest of the West, and he wanted to really unify again the Roman Empire. Very, very well supported by his wife Theodora, who encouraged him not to revolt in time of need, and she came to set the precedent for the empire and have great influence over customs and traditions in the Byzantine world. Here are some images of the Hagia Sophia. You can take a look and check out its glamour. By 631, the Byzantine had lost all of their lands, and they were facing a new threat that would further shrink their land holdings. And by 1050, the Byzantine Empire was essentially on the decline. And the Seljuk Turks are who were going to wipe out the entire Byzantine army. And they have a decline in their military. And this leads us to our final point we're going to drive home today, and that is life of the Islamic Empire. Okay, we've already kind of covered these topics of the West versus the East. Okay, let's quickly talk about this. We're going to understand how Muhammad became the prophet and the teachings of Islam, and we'll need to know how Islam helped shape the way of life of its believers. These are all the terms you need to know. Mecca before Islam was crossroads of trade, very polytheistic, made up of nomads with warlike existence called Bedouins, who are going to settle in these towns or oases by 600s. And they're all divided by tribal affiliations. Mecca, which had already been a highly polytheistic and trade center, was a religious area centered around the Kaaba. As Mecca became wealthier, greed and tensions arose amongst tribes and people. The Kaaba, or this black box, is their sacred, holy relic, and it's where everyone goes to worship and pray towards the east. Everyone's required to go once in a lifetime. The black stone is within the Kaaba. Muhammad in 632, he's this wealthy trader who got a message from the angel Gabriel telling him that there's only one God but Allah, and that he wants Muhammad to be his prophet. And Muhammad preaches in Mecca to little results and therefore leaves and goes to Medina. In the Hijra, you're going to have a battle Mecca. Muhammad's going to battle Mecca, picking up followers and Bedouin tribes. By 630, Muhammad's going to return to Mecca and destroys idols in the Kaaba and declares Allah only the true God. Because see, the Kaaba had been host to many false idols and many sacred relics of polytheistic worshippers. And he is the official founder of Islam, which, by the way, has no clergy, but does use a holy book that they call the Quran, which is God's word through Muhammad. And that's where it differs from the Christian Bible, because it is actually the spoken word of God, not the inspired word of other people from God. The unifying agent of Islam is the Sharia, which brings all aspects of life together. Family, moral conduct, business, and community life are all instilled. You can't speak of Islam without speaking of the 5 pillars, with the first one being there is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet. Islamic people are required to pray 5 times a day, give alms to the poor, or money, or any kind of need really, fast during the holy season of Ramadan, and once in their life make a pilgrimage to Mecca. The Muslim Empire is going to spread rapidly in northern Africa and Southwest Asia, also known as the Middle East. So when we wrap in wrapping all of this up, we see that the Middle Ages has been characterized by many things: the dominance of the Catholic Church, the Byzantine Empire, the growth and emergence of feudalism, the significance of the Byzantine influence on law and culture, the spread of Islam and the development of a new religion that kind of challenges Christianity, but yet also has many similarities to the Christian way of life. I hope you are prepared. If you have any questions from this, please bring it to class with you so we can discuss further. Good luck on your test.